Hey everyone, here's the meat pulao recipe you've all been waiting for.
I really need you to hear what I'm saying.
So we're going to start off by making a yakhni. Yakhni is basically a soup made with meat and onions and some spices. So it's essentially like a broth that we're going to use the broth to then later cook our rice in. So this cooks our meat but also gives us some flavour for our rice as well. So you go ahead and peel and slice your onions, and then you want to get some garlic as well and peel and slice your garlic. I normally add a thumb-sized piece of ginger as well, but I didn't have any unfortunately, so I couldn't add any in. Get a pot, add in your meat. So you can use, I'm using lamb, you can use mutton if you want to. Just be aware that mutton will take longer to cook than the lamb. Add in your onions and your garlic, and then go in with a teaspoon of salt. I keep all my whole spices that I use for rice in this jar. It smells so good every time I open it. So add in a couple of bay leaves, some cinnamon, and then 2 whole cardamom pods, the black ones, not the green ones, and a teaspoon of crushed black pepper. And I'm making 2 cups of rice in total, so I'm going to add about 5 cups of water because the water reduces quite a lot and we need enough stock to cook our rice in. So 5 cups will probably reduce to about 2.5 by the time the meat is cooked. Allow that to come to the boil, and then once it's boiling, put the lid on and turn it down to simmer. Let it simmer for about an hour until the meat is cooked. So while that's happening, you want to go ahead and prep your onions for your browning, because you need the colour from the brown onions to colour your rice. Essentially, that is what it's for. So this is exactly the same as the chicken pulao method now. So you want to go ahead and peel and slice your onions. I'm using 2 small onions. You can use 1 medium or large size onion. You really don't need a lot of onion. You just need enough to just get some colour out of for your rice. We don't really need it to make a masala or anything. So that's done. So you just put that to the side. And then you go ahead and prep all your spices. So we've already got 1 teaspoon on our stock of salt. And my rule of thumb is usually 1 teaspoon of salt per cup of rice. So I'm making 2, so I'm adding one more teaspoon of salt. You can always adjust the salt later. 1 teaspoon of black pepper, 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, 1 teaspoon of ground coriander, 1 teaspoon of cumin seeds, a few whole black peppers, and a large cardamom pod and bay leaf. You can leave out the cardamom pod and the bay leaf because it's already in the stock anyway, but I just like to add it in just for a bit of extra flavour. Then you want to go ahead and wash and soak your rice. So just wash it 3 or 4 times. Just add some water in, drain the water, and then just repeat that until most of your water runs clear, because you want to get rid of the starchiness from the rice. Okay, it's very important to do this. So I'm just using regular cold tap water to wash my rice. Okay, so once you've washed it 4 or 5 times, you go ahead and fill some more water in, enough to cover all your rice, and then leave it to soak on the side. So after an hour is up, your meat should now be cooked. So just check it. Again, if you are using mutton, it might take a little bit longer, but I'm using lamb, so an hour is usually about enough. So you check it by trying to break it, and if it breaks really easily, that means it is cooked. So just turn the heat off. Now go ahead and strain the liquid from your meat. And it's like I said, we're going to use this broth to cook our rice in. So straining it will get rid of all those extra onions in there and the whole spices and stuff, because we don't really need those anymore. And you're just left with the meat in the pot, so put that to the side and reserve your broth for later. That's very, very important for this recipe. So you've just got meat left in your pot now. And I like to pour my broth into a jug just to make it easier to measure out later. It's absolutely optional. You don't really have to do this at all. Just makes it a little easier to pour. So now we get ready to get started on our rice masala. So go ahead in your pot on a high heat, add in about 1/2 cup of oil, any kind of cooking oil. I usually cook with olive oil because that's just what I prefer. Then you go in with your onions that you sliced earlier, chuck them all in. And then you basically want to saute them until they go nice and golden. So the browner your onions are, the darker your rice will be in colour. So just keep note of that. It usually takes about 10 minutes to brown them enough. So just stir them so that they don't brown on one side and not on the other, just so they brown evenly. And then once they reach the right brownness or level of a brownness that you like, you want to go ahead and add in about half a cup of cold water. Now be careful when you do this because it will splatter. Can you see how brown my onions are? They're quite brown around the edges. That's how I like mine, okay? You can go darker if you want to, but I don't like my rice too dark, so that's the level that I like to keep it at. Once you add in your water, the onions will start to release their colour. So just mix it a little bit for roughly about 30 seconds. Just saute it to get all that colour out. Then you want to go ahead and add in your cooked meat. So your cooked red meat goes in, and then your spices that you measured out into your plate, all your ground spices. And then you want to saute this for a few minutes. I'd say about 5 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes, until your meat gets some colour. Remember, it's already cooked, so you don't really need to saute this for long at all. And once you do that, you want to go ahead and put your stock in. So remember, the liquid to rice ratio is double the amount of liquid to rice minus half a cup. Okay, so I'm using 2 cups of rice, so I need 3.5 cups of liquid in total. So my stock turned out to be 2.5 cups. So I filled up the remaining half a cup with some water, and then add another half a cup of water in. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so in total, the liquid amount that I added in was 3.5 cups. So 2.5 cups of it was stock, and then 1 cup was water. Okay, so basically you measure out your stock and then you compensate with as much water as you need to for the amount of liquid that you need. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, just ask me. Then you go ahead and add in your soaked rice. Don't add any of the liquid with the rice that you soaked it in, just the rice, okay? So add in all your rice and then just bring that to the boil. I'll just stir it so that the rice is evenly coated in there. So now you let that boil away on a high heat until the rice has absorbed most of the liquid. So you'll see what I mean in a second when that happens. I do stir it occasionally in between. Just don't stir it too often because you'll end up breaking your rice, okay? So then it will slowly start to absorb the liquid. Okay, just be very gentle when you do stir it. Don't stir it too much, just here and there in between. So then once most of the liquid is absorbed, just like this, just give it a bit of a shake and then put your lid on and put it on a low heat for 15 minutes. You want to leave it to steam for 15 minutes on a low heat. Okay, so once your rice is ready, take the lid off and then you want to fluff up your rice just so that it doesn't stick together, and just be very gentle again not to break your rice. And that is it, pretty much ready, guys. That's your meat pulao done. So once you've fluffed it up, serve it up into a plate, and there you have it, some delicious meat pulao. Enjoy your meals.